Okay, everybody, good evening. Thank you very much for joining me. It is 5 p.m. We're going to go ahead and get started here with our webinar today. What we're going to be talking about is staying compliant, year-end tax reporting, and how to get there with no penalties. This is going to include things like the FMCSA compliance, IFTA and IRP compliance and renewals, UCR deadlines, Form 2290s, and others, along with the penalties for not maintaining compliance. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be going through this information on screen. I'm going to be giving you guys a couple of talking points for each one. Please make sure that you're paying attention to this information and writing the things down. Again, please feel free to ask me any questions that you guys have live on the air. You're going to want to go ahead and use the raise hand function, the Q&A box, or the chat box to type in your message and get our attention. We're going to go ahead and start out with a little bit of information about me, and that's my pretty face on screen right now. My name is Sebastian. I'm the product manager for TruckLogics. TruckLogics, just a little bit about what that is and what we are. We are a web-based transportation or trucking management solution platform. We're a cloud-based system designed to manage your entire trucking operation from end to end. And periodically, and as part of this series, we're going to be giving you guys industry knowledge, not specifically relevant to TruckLogics, the application, but specifically relevant to you and your business. These are the things that you're going to want to pay attention to on a daily basis. So today we're going to be discussing FMCSA, UCR, IFTA, the Form 2290, IRP, and then we'll wrap up at the end with a quick 10-minute Q&A session. So jumping right into it, I'm sure everybody has heard of and is aware of the FMCSA. You could not be in operation without having heard of them first. Now, the FMCSA has enacted and updated their fee schedule for what they call civil infractions. Civil infractions are not criminal penalties, but they are penalties assessed against you, your employees, or your business for anything that the FMCSA deems as an infraction. Now, this is stuff that's not necessarily going to be something that they have to necessarily catch you in the act doing. They only need to have evidence of the fact that had it occurred. Operating a commercial motor vehicle that was placed out of service carries a fine of $19,277. These numbers, although they do seem high, are per instance, which means if you get caught more than once, you can expect more than one civil infraction. Record keeping errors. This can be something as innocuous as failing to report something, lying by omission, not having all of your paperwork where it needs to be when it needs to be supplied, knowingly falsifying records. Again, with the record keeping errors and knowingly falsify records, those work a little bit differently than the other ones. The record keeping errors, it starts at a $1,291 per day fine and caps out at $12,919. Knowingly falsifying a record is a flat $12,919 civil infraction penalty. They just penalize you. They write you a ticket. CDL violations, $5,800. Operating a commercial motor vehicle, which means continuing to operate after you have been deemed or declared unfit to operate a commercial motor vehicle, per instance, carries a civil infraction penalty of $27,813. Okay, the reason why these fines are so high is because they expect you to be able to not deal with them. Right? So one of the things that's going to happen with these types of infractions is very, very rarely are you ever going to get through an audit without these types of infractions. They're kind of like you guys would refer to the nuclear verdicts for the insurance companies and stuff like that. They are designed as a deterrent. Whether that's an effective deterrent or not has yet to be seen. However, they update these civil infraction penalties periodically. The last updated date was 1/11/2021. You can find all of this information in the FCR, the Code of Federal Registry. That's where you're going to go to look up these penalties specifically if you want to have them. But again, this is part of the overall theme that we're going to kind of imply here. Your ignorance of these fractions or the laws or your compliance with them is not a defense. You need to make sure that all of this stuff is done and corrected correctly, and all of your information is available before you go ahead and get started. Or when your auditor shows up, you need to be in what they call audit ready position. Now, one of the things that you also are required to do that a lot of people forget is biennial updates for your FMCSA. This is every 2 years, you are required, or you will face penalties for not doing so, to update your FMCSA documentation directly with them. The form is called MCS 150. Now, there's a couple of different ways that you can actually update this. And one of the ways that you really want to do, one of the things you really want to do is always comply with this, because the FMCSA can actually enact the ultimate penalty on you guys. And that is a complete revocation of your operating authority. They will take it from you. And when they take it from you, it's going to be very, very hard for you to get it back. This is different from, say, your status lapsing, or maybe you tripped over to something like inactive or something like that. One of the good things that the FMCSA does for you is they have noted that they do need to improve their processes for things like updating. So one of the things that you're going to want to do is you're going to want to update this regularly via their online portal. You can actually file that MCS form 150 directly with them online. If your status is currently inactive, though, or you are not currently in operation and your status is anything other than active, you cannot file this online. You have to email it or fax it to them. Okay, so what we're going to ask you to do is check on a few things. Okay, what you're going to want to make sure is, before you actually get in the truck and drive, update or reactivate your status. Do not get into that vehicle and start driving if you're unsure, because the penalties for doing so are so high, it's very, very likely you won't be able to handle it. Okay. Reactivate your status directly online. If you are currently in good standing, update it. Again, the form is MCS-150. The US DOT and FMCSA level a civil infraction of $1,000 per day, not to exceed $10,000 for failure to update. That's that biennial update. If you do not update every 2 years, it can go up to $10,000 in fines. Always update or reactivate your status whenever you are getting on the road. Do not let it get away from you. Another commonly missed thing, you are also required to furnish the FMCSA with proof of your insurance. This is everything from your liability insurance all the way on down to your property insurance. Every single piece of insurance that you currently have also needs to be reported. Now, the good thing about the insurance is they do have online forms. You can fill this all out online, but again, it is going to require that your status be in good standing. If your status is not in good standing, again, you need to start MCS form 150. You need to send that over via email or fax, get that processed. Once it's been updated, then go update your insurance. Very, very commonly, people skip that part and just get on the road when their status gets reactivated, and then they didn't report their insurance and they get shut down anyway. Again, the FMCSA can stop your operation in its tracks by simply revoking your authority to operate. And you saw the fines for operating when that has been revoked. Do not mess with that. Okay. The next thing you're going to want to do is set a reminder for your biennial update. This is important because of how infrequently it occurs. It's one of the only deadlines and one of the only compliance items that you need to comply with. Every MC needs to comply with, that occurs every other year, which is odd. Most things are yearly or quarterly. So again, set yourself a reminder, pay attention to this stuff. And also, just as a general rule of thumb, because we're going to touch on this later and next in the UCR stuff, if you purchase a new truck, set yourself a reminder to update your FMCSA status, update your insurance status with the FMCSA. Every time you onboard a new truck, this is part and parcel of your responsibility to maintaining your active status with the FMCSA. You should already know all of this, but I can't tell you how many times we've gone through this stuff and I end up with a client or a TruckLogics user who has no idea that they had to report their insurance as well. Next up, UCR. This is Universal Carrier Registration Plan. Now, a lot of times you're going to find people who will say things like, well, I might not be required to file. Well, we're going to tell you exactly who. If you operate a vehicle, commercial motor vehicle that is 10,000 pounds or more, and you operate in more than one state, this includes you guys with your half-ton pickups and your dualies hauling hot shot loads via a trailer. If your gross vehicle weight is 10,000 pounds or more, it applies to you. This includes the laden weight of the trailer. So again, make sure you're paying attention to that. 10,000 pounds or more, and you are operating in more than one state. Now, it's easier to show you who does not participate than it does to show who does participate. These are the non-participating states. If you live in one of these states, and operate in only this state, you may not be required to file. However, if you do operate in any state that is participating in UCR, you're required to file, period. Hands down, no questions asked. You cannot get around this requirement. You have to file it. The way that works is even if you cross into a border for a mile, mile and a half between your state, Vermont, and another state, you have to. It doesn't matter. You still have to go and file. You're going to go to ucr.in.gov, and they're going to redirect you to one of the state portals. Okay, follow their instructions. Make sure that you end up in the correct portal. Make sure that this is filed correctly. Get this stuff in. If you are caught operating without being fully compliant for UCR, we're going to go ahead and get into the penalties for that, right? You do have to file by December 31st. Okay, there were a couple of instances in the past 2 years where they were amending the fee schedule, which would be how you would pay, where the due date was extended. This year, it's December 31st. If you're scratching your head, wondering if you do need to file by December 31st, if you operate a commercial motor vehicle that's 10,000 pounds or more and you operate in any participating jurisdiction, you have to file. Go ahead and get started on this now. Okay. The way that it works is you pay based upon the number of vehicles that you currently have, and you pay the year forward. So however many vehicles you have is also pulled from your FMCSA listing. Remember how we spoke in the previous slides about how the FMCSA is going to need to be updated periodically. They even also have a requirement that you update them every 2 years. Your vehicle count from your FMCSA page is what UCR uses to charge you the fees. So if your FMCSA information is not up to date, you might overpay. So again, this all kind of ties in together. You're going to want to make sure that everything is up to date and everything is good to go. What to look out for, okay? You still have to file. I want to emphasize that again. I can't tell you how many times I've spoken to somebody who thought they didn't have to, but crossed into the border of what you would call a UCR participant jurisdiction. And when they did so, they still thought that they were fine because they lived in a state that was exempt. It doesn't matter. Even if you live in Washington, D.C., as soon as you cross into Maryland, and then cross over into New Jersey, and then cross over into New York. So you went through 3 jurisdictions where you didn't have to file. As soon as you hit New York, there you go. That's your requirement right there. You have to file. So again, make sure that you file by December 31st. Don't overpay. Remember, the fees are assessed based upon the vehicle count on your FMCSA listed page on their website. You can go right to the FMCSA page, fmcsa.gov website, go to company snapshot, type in your MC number or your company name, find your name in the list, click on it, and it will tell you exactly how many trucks are going to be billable for UCR. If that's not accurate, MCS form 150. Go ahead and submit that online if your status is still in good standing. Okay. Next up, always take this stuff seriously. Can't tell you how many times people have told me it's fine. I only went 1 mile into this border, or it's okay. We don't necessarily need to, or I just bought a truck. I'll file the UCR later, this, that, and the other thing. The UCR and the FMCSA work very, very closely together to not only audit you, but they will also use that information to shut you down. What I mean by that is you buy a new truck, you do have to go and file your UCR and update your FMCSA pages immediately. If you say, it'll be fine, I don't have to worry about it. Let's just go ahead. I have 5 trucks. I just bought a 6th one. It's fine. I still got to wait for the 2290. No big deal. It's cool. We'll just get that truck moving and we'll file the paperwork later. Here's what you're risking. You're risking your driver in the 6th truck crossing into a state, getting pulled into a weigh station, the state trooper taking a look at his UCR, realizing that the fleet has 6 trucks in operation, checking against the 5 that it sees on your FMCSA page, and then he pulls your driver out of that truck, and that truck can no longer roll. You're stopped completely. They'll stop your other trucks too, completely, until you are right with UCR. Again, take it very, very seriously. A lot of these people see the word civil infraction next to some of these penalties or next to some of these enforcement actions and this, that, and the other thing, and think it's fine. It'll be okay. It's just like a meter maid or something like that, writing me a ticket. I can deal with this. These people are, tied directly into the government. They will shut you down if you don't comply with this stuff. So again, pay attention, take it very, very seriously. Next up is IFTA. This is one of my favorite ones. My favorite because there are all kinds of weird ways that each one of the states is going to hit you and hit you hard if you don't comply. So IFTA, International Fuel Tax Agreement, if you're 26,000 pounds or more and you operate in more than one base jurisdiction, which is all 48 contiguous lower United States and the 10 provinces of Canada, you are required by law to maintain an IFTA license in good standing and to file the IFTA quarterly returns. The penalties for filing late are $50 or 10% of the taxes due, whichever is greater. Again, pay attention to that. You may not think that there's a lot of penalties involved. It's only $50. It's only 10%, yada, yada, blah, blah, blah. Here's the problem. It's whichever is greater. They're always going to hit you for whatever fee is higher. Now, here's a good example of Nevada, our favorite state. We're going to discuss them a couple times throughout this. Nevada has a $50 flat fee plus the tax penalty. So your state may be a little bit different than other states. So you're going to want to pay attention to how your state applies late filing penalties. Now, if you think you're okay with just filing late, don't worry. They're also going to hit you for paying late as well. So if you file late, you usually pay late. And the late penalty is 4.16 or 0.4167 of the tax due every month, month over month, compounded infinitely until the tax amount is paid. Now, usually you can get some reprieve on that word infinitely if you can provide them with due cause or justification as to why you have not made the payment yet. But in most cases, if that explanation does not suffice, your tax penalty will compound monthly in perpetuity until you take care of it. Okay. Nevada, again, we're going to talk about how expensive Nevada is. So let's just say, for example, you don't pay on time in Nevada. It's again that 0.4167% of the tax due assessed month over month every month. And then they charge you an administrative late fee, $100. If you pay late again, that administrative late fee increases to $500. The third time, $1,000, $1,500 the fourth time, $2,000 the fifth time, and $2,500 for every time you pay late after that. So if you're routinely late for filing, you can very, very quickly get up to paying more in penalties than you ever would in taxes. So again, pay attention to it. Late filing and penalty for late payment. It's also going to assess you penalties if you underpay, because just like all the other taxes that we're talking about, ultimately you're responsible. Ultimately, you have to know. You need this information and you need to file. A lot of places can do it for you for a fee, but ultimately you are responsible to make sure that it's done right, that the math is done right, and that the penalties are calculated correctly, meaning taxes due to your state or credits owed to you. Again, very much like the late fee, 0.4167% of the tax due every month over month until the tax is paid. It's just going to keep incrementing up and up and up and up and up and up and up forever until you get that taken care of. Okay. The last is state-specific application fees. Every state does IFTA a little bit differently. You might find that you're in a base jurisdiction like South Carolina, for example, where they do not charge you a fee to obtain your decals and to renew or apply for your IFTA license. What you may find, though, is you may find that if you live or operate in another member jurisdiction, let's just say, for example, New Jersey, they do charge a small monetary fee for the processing of your application. They are allowed to process that fee. It's for administrative overhead. They're allowed to charge you a fee to process your application to offset their administrative overhead. So what you're going to want to do is send your payment in along with your application. Your instructions on your application will be available on your state websites. Just follow it along exactly the way it occurs and make sure that you're 100% compliant with your submission. That means your application or your renewal fee. Now, for IFTA, very, very much about paying attention, more so than the other ones. UCR once a year or whenever you get a new truck. FMCSA once every 2 years or whenever you get a new truck. IFTA is quarterly. If you're not paying attention, a quarter can go by really quick. Some states have a 7-day grace period after the end of the quarter. Some states have a 30-day grace period after the end of the quarter. Here's what we recommend. Get yourself a system that tracks it for you. TruckLogics does. What we'll do is we'll start sending you periodic reminders as you get closer to the due date. We'll also tell you what the due date is. So make sure that you're plugged into a system that has all of this information centralized in one spot and can help you get this information formatted and submitted properly. So I know if you've worked with TruckLogics before, you've ever had a conversation with me before about TruckLogics and its IFTA section, it produces file-ready IFTA reports. You just print them and mail them to your base jurisdiction. We do all the math for you. We do error checking. We also do automatic IFTA rate updates periodically whenever they're published. This way you have the most accurate, most up-to-date information, and you can get your return done directly on your state forms without any additional work, okay? If you have or question about that or want to give me a call and ask me about that, please do so. Now, this is one of my favorite things, and this is why I like IFTA. Very rarely you might come across this unicorn. It's called a zero mileage return. Now, one of the things that throws people off with IFTA a lot is think of your IFTA license as an obligation to file. So a lot of things and a lot of times people are like, well, I sold my truck. I'm not in operation. I don't have to do this anymore. Not true. For IFTA, you are required to file 4 quarterly returns from the date of issuance of your license, whether or not you were in operation. Failure to file will assess penalties, even if there is no tax payment due. Okay. This is called a zero mileage return. It is your state forms completely filled out with your business information with one box checked in most instances. You can even go online in some states and do this online directly via the e-file system. But just remember, even if you are not currently in operation, you are still required to file your IFTA return if you have an IFTA license. Excuse me. That brings me to my next point. IFTA is one of the more modern systems that we've come across with. It's very, very easy to use. Most of the states have wrangled their e-filing process pretty well and have everything streamlined. The only difference you're really going to find is whether or not it's on the Treasury website or the DMV or IRP website for your state. Check both, but in almost every instance, you can renew your IFTA license online. Some states are even as technologically advanced as we are at TruckLogics and Express Truck Tax. They might send you a reminder. One of the things that we recommend to make sure that you're always getting your reminders, if you periodically receive updates or routine updates for license renewals or expiry dates or that kind of a thing from a .gov email address. That means it's like, your state name at, state.gov. Add .gov extensions to your safe sender list in your email box. This way it doesn't skip the email box. It doesn't accidentally end up in your spam or your junk. Remember, I said at the beginning of the webinar, your ignorance of your requirements or your obligations to maintain compliance is not a defense. You are still required to know everything that you need to file and to make sure that all of this information has been set up correctly and everything is currently in place and renewed. Okay. Next up, Form 2290. Now, Form 2290, this is one of the very, very common ones that causes a lot of people a lot of headaches, and it's the easiest one. Now, with the 2290, it is a federal excise tax. It's different from IFTA. IFTA would be considered a state tax. So the late penalties and the late filing fees and all the fees that we're going to discuss now are not penalties levied by the state. They are levied by the federal government. So you can end up in trouble on both ends, your state with IFTA and the federal government with your 2290 and with the FMCSA stuff and UCR, if you are not maintaining compliance with this stuff. So the Form 2290, 4.5% of the total tax due month over month. This one stops at 5 months. Okay, so if you're a single vehicle and you're renewing for the entire year, you're in the highest weight category, your tax payment is typically $550. It's 4.5% of that assessed month over month for 5 months. Paying late also has its own penalty, 0.5% of your total tax amount. That is going to be an additional interest charge of 0.54% assessed month over month in perpetuity. So not paying comes with a penalty that gets assessed forever. Late filing, that kind of a thing, it stops after a while. Now, here's the thing. What you're always going to want to do, and this is what we would recommend if you are late or you're going to be late, we recommend taking care of as much as you can immediately. go ahead, get that form filed, pay the base taxes, and then let them send you the bill for the late fees. Then pay the late fees when you can, or call the letter and see if you can't work with them directly to see what you can do about taking care of the late fees. However, you're never going to get out of this. It's Big Brother. They're going to come and they're going to take it from you whether you want to or not. So make sure that you're always paying attention to this stuff. Okay. Here's the rub. If you've ever had to renew your plates and you didn't have a valid form 2290, you've probably experienced them turning you away at the DMV or IRP office. You are required to have this. If you do not have it, your DMV or IRP office, rightfully so, will not renew your plates. They're not going to accept that you have provided them with a valid copy until you show them the stamped 2290 form. Okay. The stamped 2290 you can obtain anytime. So just like buying a truck, you can file all year long. The way that it works is you're going to need to file the 2290 by the end of the month following your first use month. So what that means is, let's just use December as an example. So we're in December, we're in about the middle of the year. We're a few months in rather. So what you're going to want to do is, if you put a truck on the road this month, December, you are required to file with a first use month of January by the last day in January. If I put a truck on the road in January, I am required to file a Form 2290 on that truck by the last day in February in order for that truck to be considered valid. Now, a lot of times you're going to want to do that ahead of time. It's going to depend upon the temporary tags that you have on the truck. You cannot get full valid tags from your state unless you have the 2290 form, period. Hands down, no questions asked. They're not going to even move forward unless you have all that information. So what you can do is you're going to file this all year. Now, here's the cool thing. This is the easiest one to maintain compliance with. Out of all of them, it is by far the easiest because you can file it for yourself online and it takes about 5 minutes. Once it's been filed, you're going to get your stamped 2290 in about 5 to 10 minutes after you complete the process. The IRS themselves actually recommended on their conference call this year that everybody do move to an e-filing system for the 2290 just to ease congestion at the IRS offices. However, if you do want to wait 6, 8, or 12 weeks for a paper copy to be mailed to you, by all means, use the paper mail. However, if you only want to wait 5 to 10 minutes, use an online e-file provider. Express Truck Tax is the best in the business. You're going to want to use them. Now, here's a trick. Paying and filing are two separate and distinct processes when it comes to the 2290. Filing your 2290 and getting your stamp Schedule 1, that's going to happen the day that you decide to do it. So you could go get registered and tagged the day that you decide to file. That's why we recommend you do it all at once. File your Form 2290, and then as soon as you get your stamped Schedule 1 copy, you're going to want to email it to whoever it is at your DMV or IRP office that you talk to, print out a copy, whatever it might be. Just make sure that all that stuff is all ready to go, and then just head on over to your IRP or DMV office with everything else in there. Now, don't get tripped up about the paying part, though. If I file with a first use month of January 2022, my due date for my taxes is the last day in February. Now, because it is a self-reporting excise tax, you'll hear people who might say something to you like, oh, it's fine. How are they going to know? Oh, believe me, they'll know. You cannot drive down the road forever with a temporary tag. And as soon as that temporary tag expires, they're going to pull you over and they're going to ask you for your 2290. We have heard horror stories from the Midwest about state troopers who are very, very much overzealous and don't believe you when you show them your cab card and registration. They want to see your 2290. So you might want to print out a copy of that and bring it with you, or better yet, use a system like TruckLogics and save that in our secure cloud. Okay, that way you have a copy of it no matter what, but don't forget to pay. Now, you can do a couple of things to make your life easier and get this paid all at once. You can elect like electronic funds withdrawal or to use a credit card or debit card when you file the 2290 so you can get the taxes taken care of the same day that you file. But again, remember, they are two separate and distinct processes. Make sure that you are filed and you are paid when it comes to the 2290. But out of all of them, that's the easiest one to deal with. Next up is the IRP, or International Registration Program. The way that this one works is you're going to have to go ahead and deal with how very unforgiving the IRP schedule is, because it is completely different no matter in every state that you're in. There is what they call a staggered deadline. So the staggered deadline could be, your deadline could be December 31st. Your buddy's deadline could be January. Your other buddy's deadline could be March. Either way, it's very, very hard to determine unless you don't know where to go to look for the information, which is going to be right on your cab card and right on your license plate directly. It'll tell you need to renew in that month. Okay. Remember, the staggered deadline also has no grace period. So what you're supposed to do for IRP is they expect you to renew your IRP in the month in which it should renew, which means if your renewal is in December, you should start this process December 1st, not December 29th. Because again, there is no grace period for the IRP renewals. Your penalties are going to start being assessed the day that you are late, 1 minute past midnight. Okay. On the day after the expiration date of your tags, if you're not completely up to date and all this stuff and all this paperwork is in and you're completely renewed, you gave them a copy of your 2290, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Minute one, penalties are being assessed. Okay. Every state has different fees. Every state assesses them differently. But the way that they work is they can be very mild, like $10, $15, up to $75 to a few $100s. And again, some of them have these built-in compounding rates where they charge you and then they charge you again, and then they charge you again, and then they penalize you again and again and again. Again, the impression that I want to give you guys is if you just, put your hands over your ears and say, I'm not listening, you can't hear me, and you just try to ignore it and hope it's going to go away, it gets worse. So again, there's a bunch of stuff that you need to make sure that you already have done and that you are aware of. Again, you're ultimately responsible. Look up your state's fee schedule. Okay. It'll be on your IRP or DMV office website, and it'll be in the renewal section. And you're going to look under the late fees and failure to file section. They'll also give you a list of requirements for what you need to bring with you. That's what we mentioned before. As a requirement, every single state has a 2290 requirement for IRP renewals. You need to make sure that you have that. Now, the fun part about the IRP renewals, let's go back here for 1 second, just real quick. Your documentation needs to match. So on your 2290, if your personal name is on your 2290, but on your loan documentation for the truck, it has a company name, like you bought the truck in your company name, but you filed your 2290 on it in your personal name, they're not going to give you tags because that information needs to match. So remember, your 2290 form, your loan documentation, your IRP registration information, it all needs to be coming from the same person or the same company. If you have a mismatch in there, it doesn't matter if you own the company. It doesn't matter what type of company it is. It doesn't matter if you put the wrong company name or a DBA name on the 2290. The DBA name doesn't count when it comes to the IRS and it comes to the IRP office. Only the name before that counts. Make sure everything is already done and everything already matches when you bring it with you. Okay. Bring your 2290 form. Make sure everything matches down to the VIN. That's the one thing that is also a very common thing. You have all of your company name information correct. You have all of your date information correct. You have your address information correct. Whoops, you forgot a digit on the VIN. Double check that. It is 17 digits long. It's, I've messed them up before myself. Don't worry about it. Just make sure that you're always making sure that everything is matching. Everything is completely correct. And then I cannot emphasize this enough. Do it as early as you can. Remember that staggered deadline. If your renewal is in December 1st, the first thing and you should be thinking about is IRP. If your renewal is in March or April or July or May or whatever it might be, that first day of that month, that's when you need to be paying attention. Make sure you do it as early as possible. This is to account for things like mistakes. I mean, everybody's human. It happens all the time. If you forgot that one digit in your VIN, it's innocuous. You can fix it for free on expresstrucktax.com if you filed the original with us. But here's the thing. It might add 10 days to the turnaround time to get your paperwork in because you have to paper mail it. You never know. You never know how your state will or will not accept the documents. Again, it's your responsibility to know. So make sure you are keeping track of all of this stuff and do it early, especially with the IRP stuff. Always make sure that you're doing it early. Okay, a little bit of information about what we can do now that we have, kind of giving you the information about what non-compliance looks like, including the monetary fees associated with some of that stuff. What you're going to need, you're going to need your Form 2290. We're going to go ahead and head over to expresstrucktax.com to get that. You're going to need a place to access all of your documents from anywhere in the world. What you're going to need is a secure document storage system, TruckLogics.com. You're going to run your business from that one, and you're going to keep a copy of all of your documents. Wouldn't it be nice if you were standing in line at the DMV and they asked you for a document and you said, hold on, and you tap 3 buttons on your phone and it was right there on your screen, as opposed to having to dig for it, call somebody, have them email it to you, maybe fax it to them. You get what I'm saying? The DMV is a nightmare. And then what you're also going to need is you're going to need your UCR and 2290 filed over the phone. If you're an owner operator or a leased op, we know you guys are always on the road. You guys don't want to be offload because then you're not generating any revenue. What we do is we do have UCR and 2290 phone filing services. Again, those are on demand self-reporting. You need to file those as soon as you buy a new truck. So if you are also drive and manage a fleet and you're currently on the road, you still don't have an excuse. Give TSN America a call. That's our sister product. It's a sister of Express Truck Tax and TruckLogics. Go ahead and give them a call. They'll take care of you right over the phone. This way, you don't have to worry about getting out of your truck. You don't have to worry about waiting until you get back to your office. You will be good to go as soon as you get off the phone with them. They'll handle the rest for you. Okay. Also, I just want to let you know and remind everybody, we are here to help. However, just one more time, I just want to go ahead and provide this caveat to you. It is your responsibility. You are ultimately responsible for being aware of any and all compliance requirements with which you must conform to. We are happy to help you any way that we can to help you determine what those are and point you in the right directions to make sure that you can get that information. We'll provide you with any DMV contact phone number that you need. You call our support teams over at TruckLogics or Express Truck Tax. If we can't answer the question for you, we'll tell you who can and direct you to them. This way you don't have to be floundering or try to scramble to get the information. If we can't answer it directly for you, we will go ahead and send you to wherever we know you can get the answer. And then any other generalized questions that you might have, this is about the 2290, UCR, IRP, FMCSA, whatever they might be. I know you may have spoken to me in the past. One of the things we take pride in is we are so well immersed in the industry that we would consider ourselves experts. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to give Express Truck Tax, TruckLogics, or TSN America a call with any of the questions that you might have about any of the things that we discussed. Again, we want to make sure that everybody is starting off 2022 correctly. And just a friendly reminder about the UCR, it is due December 31st. So that is your action item and takeaway from this webinar tonight. If you have not done so already, please go ahead and get that started right now. All right, next up, we're going to just open it up to a couple of questions if anybody has any. I appreciate everybody sticking with me a little bit over time. We're going to go ahead and look at the chat and the Q&A boxes as well. We'll also go ahead and open the floor up to attendees. Okay, it looks like Mohammed is asking us a question. What I'm going to do, Mohammed, is I'm going to use a button on my end. It's called Allow to Talk. When I click that, you then have to unmute yourself. Once you have been unmuted, you can then go ahead and ask your question live. All right, everybody, we're going to go ahead and take a question here from Mohammed. Mohammed, I have allowed you to go ahead and speak. Go ahead and unmute and ask me your question, sir.
Good evening to everybody. My name is Mohammed from Shusha Express LLC. My question is, keeping the records in FMCSA, I lost one of the documentation from the driver, the first driving driver record, driving record. So yep. I required to him to get for me new one. So when they were doing the audit, are they requiring me to have the first one I took it from the driver, or I can show them the current one?
You can show them the current one or the one from the driver. Either one would work. Now,
No, yeah,
remember,
the one from the, so sorry about that. The one from the driver for the first one, the first time I was hiring, I cannot see it. But you know, I required him to get a new one from the RMV, and he
right,
also already gave me a new one. So when
right.
they do in the audit, will they require me to have the first one that when I was hiring? Or yeah, that's my question.
No, it wouldn't matter. It's the same form.
Okay.
It wouldn't matter. It doesn't matter when it's dated. It's the same form. So the second one would
Oh,
work. Now, remember,
thank you
and
very
this is
much. Yeah.
one thing you're going to want to pay attention to. Penalties can be assessed versus you, the
Mm-hmm.
company, or the
Mm-hmm.
employee, or its agents. So don't think
Okay.
of the FMCSA as kind of like a nuclear blast, like your insurance company, where they're just going to hit the
Okay.
company as hard as they can. If they find out or determine that it is the employee of the company who is knowingly falsifying or withholding records, that is who they will assess the penalty against. If you can determine that it was the driver's fault and not yours,
Yeah.
that's who's going to get in trouble, not you.
Okay. I
All
understand.
right.
Thank you very much. Yep.
No problem. Okay. Let's go ahead and take any other questions. Does anybody else have any other questions? It looks like we got a couple of them coming in here. Looks like we got one from Anonymous. No big deal. Again, guys, you do not have to put your name in the Q&A section if you do not want to. It is okay to ask me a question anonymously. If you're more comfortable doing so, don't worry about it. The question that we got is, what about HUT? Okay. All right. Anonymous, no worries. HUT is called highway use tax. There are 4 states, Kentucky, New Mexico, New York, and Oregon. They have a separate and distinct tax that is required to be filed quarterly, just like IFTA, called HUT. It's highway use tax. Okay. In all of these states, you are required to report the miles driven and the highways that you used. Okay. You're going to have to report this directly to your state. Now, in some cases, if you operate less than a certain amount of mileage, like for example, New York, if you operate less than a certain amount of mileage and pay less than a certain amount in taxes, they might move you from what they call a quarterly to an annual. These are all really weird the way they have them set up. But the general rule of thumb that I like to tell people about is if you are operating in those states, you do have to file in those states, the HUT, in addition to what you normally file for IFTA. This is even if you live in that state. If you live in Kentucky, you still have to file Kentucky HUT. It doesn't matter. So make sure that you're paying attention with that. And do make sure that you check the state requirements as well as to what you do need to file. I know some states require that you use the highways used and the miles driven. So again, pay attention to that. Again, those states are Kentucky, New Mexico, New York, and Oregon. Okay, it looks like we got a couple coming in. Laura, what data do we need in TruckLogics to generate the IFTA tax form? The IFTA generation functionality will take information from your dispatch trip sheets and from the expenses, as long as that expense is associated with a truck. It will carry that information automatically to the relevant sections on your state form. The only thing you need to do with the TruckLogics system to maintain a accurate IFTA reporting is to update your trip sheets as part of your dispatches every time you populate one. So every time you generate a dispatch, populate that trip sheet and then record your fuel back into the system. You can record the fuel as part of each dispatch, but you could also record that fuel as a general expense just associated with a unit. If I have a dispatch, I show the load delivered, plus I have a feed from Fleet One with all gas. Okay. Yeah, Laura, it looks like you're asking about the integrations. So the integration with EFS Fleet One, the way that that works is you can batch import up to 3 months worth of transactions at a time. All those transactions are associated with a unit every time you import them. But you do have to select the date range that you would like to import and then verify the import before it's successful. So it's not going to automatically add a transaction to your it's not going to automatically add a transaction to your expense transactions list when you swipe that card at the pump. Because again, that transaction needs to settle out with your discount on it. So that won't automatically travel in. What you're going to do is once a week, once a month, whatever it might be, you're going to want to go ahead and double check that everything is settled and ready to be imported, and then just search for the date range that you want and just directly import it. Yeah, verifying expense means if your driver is purchasing something with his fuel card, you should know what he purchased and the breakdown of what was purchased. If he is permitted to buy fuel, reefer, and DEF on the actual fuel card itself, what you're going to do to verify the transaction is you're going to check versus your settlement report that you receive from EFS or Fleet One versus what you're seeing on screen when you go to import that transaction into TruckLogics. The information will match exactly, but you're going to want to verify that that transaction actually occurred, right? The ultimate authority on that would be your EFS system. Okay. So make sure that you're double checking that information. Now with Keep Trucking, that's our other tie-in for the IFTA reporting. If you have a Keep Trucking ELD, you can directly import your actual miles off of the ELD devices themselves. And then as Laura is doing, you can go ahead and pull in your expense transactions from EFS. You can completely eliminate the human being in the middle of that process by using Keep Trucking ELDs and EFS fuel cards. This way, your information is getting ported directly from those devices. All right, let's go ahead to the next one. Looks like Mohammed has another question. Do they need me to keep record for the warning tickets? Mohammed, if you have ever been issued a piece of paper from any state official or police enforcement agency, you will never, ever, 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 ever throw that out. Don't get rid of that. Even if it's just a warning, even if it's just you need this for next time, or here's a write-up of a report of what you might need, or maybe they stopped your driver and gave him a warning, you should never throw that out. That should become part of a permanent record, and you should store that in two places. You're going to want to securely store that in a locked filing cabinet in your office, and you're going to want to also secure that on an online platform where you have access to it from anywhere in the world. You never know when it might be a question of what was actually on that or what needed to be, resolved because of that. And getting rid of the original is always a bad idea. So make sure you save anything that was given to you by an enforcement agency, no matter how innocuous you might think it might be. Okay. Here's a question. This one asked by Anonymous. This is a scary one. Okay. Anonymous asks, how will the FMCSA know that I'm not compliant? How will they know if I'm falsifying records or something like that? Okay. This is the type of question that I dread, because you're talking about your state government and federal government agencies that issue you your authorities and licenses in which to operate. These authorities are required by law to audit a certain number of people based upon things like in the FMCSA, like the status of those current carriers. So even if you're no longer active and you may have moved to inactive, don't think that you're kind of like off their radar or anything like that. They actually put you in your own little bucket and audit you at a certain rate that's actually higher than everything else. So don't think of it as they need to know that you're compliant. They expect you to be compliant. It is your obligation to be compliant. It is your responsibility to be compliant. Again, ignorance of the requirements is not a defense. The only thing they have to do is audit you. And when they show up and ask you a question you don't have an answer for, that's it. You're no longer compliant. They ask you for a piece of paper you no longer have. There you go. You're not compliant. They ask you for information as to why two records don't match each other. That's it. You're non-compliant. Now, remember those civil infractions that I showed you guys? That's the scary part about non-compliance. So what you want to do is you want to get yourself into what we call audit ready state. You're going to want to make sure that all of your I's are dotted and all of your T's are crossed. You're going to go back through your state requirements. You're going to go back through the FMCSA webpage and requirements. You're going to double check all of that information. You're going to make sure that everything is good to go. Because remember, the FMCSA does not need to catch you in the act, so to speak. They even have their own little line item that they can fine you up to $15,691 for not keeping records. So even if you keep a bad record, even if you forget to keep a record, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. So make sure you are completely aware of what your responsibilities are and that you are always maintaining this compliance. What we are going to do for you at TruckLogics and Express Truck Tax is we're going to make sure that you're aware of this information by giving it to you as best we can in an easily digestible format. So what we're going to do after this is over, it doesn't look like we're getting any more questions, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap up now. I would invite you to give us a call. If you have any questions, if you would like to learn more, if you need additional information, if you want to learn about IFTA, if you want to learn about secure document storage, give us a call. Our phone number is right there on screen, 704-234-6946. My name is Sebastian. Anybody on my team can help you and answer all of your questions. Any of the experts over at Express Truck Tax are also more than happy to help you any way that they can with whatever they can. And remember, even if we do not have the answer for you at the moment, we will find it for you or direct you to the person that has it. So again, if you do need to get anything from us or you have any questions, please let us know. We're also going to be sending a copy of this webinar out to anybody that did join and anybody that may have registered and missed it, so you can watch it again at your leisure. We'll also post it on our webpage later on this evening, just to make sure that you guys have access to it via our YouTube channel. I wanted to thank everybody again for attending this evening. Next up in our webinar series, we're going to be going into more details about how to centralize and manage your operation a little bit better to maintain compliance with all of these things that we scared you with this time. Again, that's my apologies, but I would appreciate it if you went ahead and joined us for the rest of the webinar series. You can also catch me on Facebook Live at TruckLogics and on all of my socials at TruckLogics. We periodically post industry news, updates, memes, funny stories, and additional information about TruckLogics. Just go ahead and plug yourself in everywhere, and we're happy to help you any way that we can. Again, thank you very much for joining me this evening. Have a great night.